Hey guys, there's a build guide in the description below, but there's useful information in the video that won't be in the guide, so let's get into it. The fastest Druid build for leveling is no longer Lightning Storm, it's no longer Tornado, it is Pulverize. Because of the sheer amount of enemies in the game now, due to mob density buffs over time, Lightning Storm was shadow nerfed because, it only has a certain amount of targets that it can hit, and Tornado doesn't target enough things without a high roll on its drop only aspect, so it's kind of inconvenient for leveling anyway. Thus, Pulverize comes into the spotlight, and what a beautiful sight to behold. Wow. First off, staves are overpowered in this game. Make sure you're using one whenever you can. They have a base attack speed of 1.0, which is the fastest out of all two-handers in the game. Highly recommended. As soon as you are able to, grab the passive that gives you Spirit on Shapeshift. When you get to playing, you'll understand why and be thankful for it immediately. Right away, you're able to get most of the aspects that make this build go off the rails. First, aspect of Ursine Horror from Belfry Zakara to turn Pulverize into an Earth skill. Second, Ballistic aspect from Whispering Pines to give your Earth skills, which Pulverize is one now after the first aspect, +2 to their levels while you have Fortify. Third, aspect of Quicksand from Feral's Den to slow everything damaged by Earth skills. Fourth, aspect of Umbral from Champion's Demise to gain back large chunks of resource every time you cast Pulverize into a large group of enemies. Lastly, aspect of Retaliation from Seaside Descent to grab a nice little damage boost along the way. You'll understand quickly that when you put all 5 of these aspects together, it'll feel like summoning Exodia basically. You will be so oddly powerful, but in a well-rounded way with no weaknesses, with tons of tank, movement, resource gen, sustain, CC, and most importantly, damage. And you'll probably be wondering at some point why early game Druid is memed on. Let them meme. Early game Druid built like this is insane. Poison Creeper helps out a ton over time and can easily clear most of the screen when enemies are too spread out. Because we'll be grabbing the Nature Magic passive circle near the bottom left of the skill tree, it's a good idea to weave Storm Strike into Pulverize, into Storm Strike, into Pulverize again and again and again, so that you get the most damage possible out of each activation of Pulverize, as well as upkeep your damage reduction, apply vulnerable to enemies, and immobilize enemies, all from just making sure that Storm Strike is being used at the same time. And I pick up Ursine's Strength as the major passive at the end of the skill tree simply because of how basically good it is. You can use Earthen Might, but since this is an early game variation of the build, you might find that it doesn't proc very frequently, so it's up to you though, of course. Once you get 125 Spirit Offerings, that's when you'll want to make your first visit to to Turadora. Grab the swooping attacks from the Eagle Tree and bolster from the Wolf Tree, and these will smooth the build out more than you can imagine. But how does bolster smooth the build out, you might ask? Well, later on, when you unlock the Obsidian Slam Spirit boon, you'll be overpowering a heck of a lot of times. So the bolster boon will make Earthen Bulwark fortify even more than it already does, and make Bloodhowl fortify with each cast. And very importantly, Bloodhowl's healing effect happens before the Fortify's effect, so you'll heal and then you'll bring your Fortify levels up at the same time directly after. This makes the upkeep of Fortify completely automatic, which in turn makes sure that the ballistic aspect and aspect of retaliation will have 100% uptimes. The vampiric powers for this build don't affect the fundamental gameplay too much. You'll just be tankier, have more fortify generation, and a bit more damage overall. Nothing interesting, but very useful nonetheless. The build will have more options in terms of late game scaling because of these vampiric powers, so you'll probably be grateful for them in the end. And I've got to say, once you get this build up and running, it is unstoppable, literally and metaphorically. You have Barrier, you have Fortify, you have High Health, you have Sustain, you got CC, hella damage and damage reduction, and you're just an absolute menace, overpowered in every way with no weaknesses. Pulverize scales well into the mid and late game too, so you won't have to swap builds out ever if you don't want to. But of course, who plays Druid without wanting to do Wear NATO eventually? I just had so much fun with this build that I honestly kept playing for a while longer after I was done filming all of this footage, just because the closest thing that I could compare playing this build to is like a bulldozer on crack. Hope this all helps you get to that godly endgame Druid that you've been dreaming about just a little bit faster. Popping up now should be a couple other videos that you might find relevant, interesting, entertaining, whatever. TY, stay safe.